So, one of the very common advices or ideologies I've come across over many years that have been passed down to women is this idea of just find a man you can grow to love. Okay. And I'm gonna be real with y'all, I'm not a fan of it whatsoever. And I've examined this approach, this mindset in tons of relationships, tons of marriages. And I'm here to tell you, it really doesn't work. Now, we first need to understand people quantify or people qualify what's working in different ways. For some individuals, simply being together over a very long period of time it's working. To me, longevity does not equal success. There are plenty of people who have been together a very long time and their marriages are very miserable. Now, the reason why that of course is a problem by itself for the two people involved, because I cannot call something a success if two people are very unhappy, or at least one person is extremely unhappy in the situation. However, if we go beyond that, because there are some people who will say, well, it's not about us as adults at that point, it's about the children if children are involved. But miserable marriages produce, I'm going to use the word and I'm using it respectfully, dysfunctional children. When I say dysfunctional, at the very least, maybe not dysfunctional in their day-to-day lifestyle, but typically dysfunctional in their future relationships. And it creates a cycle of very distorted understandings and perceptions of what relationships should be, what marriage should be, which ends up having a lot of consequences. Now, we won't get too deep into that aspect of it, because again, some people may just want to see it differently. So we can agree to disagree if you're one of those individuals who views it differently. However, I'm going to lay out for you why this whole growing to love him does not typically work. There's exceptions to every rule. Somebody might say, well, I know a couple and it worked for them. Great. I applaud them if it did. That's not usually the case. That's not the norm. Those are rare exceptions. And again, if we dig deeper, sometimes what we think is an exception ain't what we really think it is. But again, let's get into why this growing to love a man does not work. And one of the big reasons why it does not work, and this is assuming this is part of the growing to love him process, is that without attraction, without a strong enough attraction, you as a woman won't be able to sustain desire. Okay, so what do I mean here? A lot of these situations of growing to love them start with the fact that there's not really a strong attraction there. He may be a great guy, he may bring a lot of wonderful things to the relationship, right? But you're just not really attracted to him. Now, a lot of people in society will tell you, well, looks matter less to women. And that may be true in a general sense. And true in the sense that women, there's a lot more than the physical appearance for many women, not all, because some of y'all are like, nah, I need the looks. But for many women, there's a lot of non-physical attributes that can make the attraction strong or stronger, okay? However, it's only so much that the non-physical can compensate or overcome what may be lacking physically. Now, some women may feel, well, there's nothing wrong with being able to look past the physical or look past the lack of attraction to be with a man, especially when he's a good man. And I understand why you would think that. But again, here's why it's a problem. When you're not genuinely attracted to this individual, regardless of how they look, because I'm a firm believer, it's about attraction, not necessarily looks. And so that you understand the difference in case anyone's confused, looks is about like they have to be, it's about the specifics about how they present themselves. Maybe they have to be this tall, they have to be this frame, they have to look like this. Okay, that's a focus on looks. Attraction is just you just find them attractive, and that can sometimes fall outside of your typical type or fall outside of the box that you may have desired. There's plenty of women who may have desired a very tall man, but fell in love and are very attracted to a man right now who's only a couple inches taller than them, right? And that they didn't see that coming, but it happened. That's attraction at play. So attraction to me can't be overlooked, shouldn't be overlooked. Looks, different story. But the reason why you should not look past the attraction, especially in these growing to love a man situations, is because ultimately we have to be real with ourselves as individuals, as human beings, and understand that attraction does fuel our action. Okay, let me say it again. Attraction does fuel, or at least does help fuel, our action. When we are attracted to someone, and more specifically our partner, we are more likely to be loving, affectionate, respectful, all these things. It doesn't mean it's a guarantee. It doesn't mean there aren't other things that can get in the way. However, there's a greater chance, or it makes it easier to be those things, which is why, like, there are studies that show how, like, very attractive people have it easier in the workplace, okay? Because that naturally motivates or inspires or gives people a little bit more fuel to treat you a certain kind of way. And that does play out in a relationship. But when there is no attraction, it becomes very easy to start being less affectionate and just to not even have that desire, okay? To not speak to them as respectfully as you would otherwise. I know some of y'all are like, nah, I wouldn't do that. I'm telling you, over time, it can happen. I've seen it happen in tons of marriages and relationships. And just the overall way you treat them, the overall way you show up for them, all these things can be impacted by attraction. But even more so importantly, in the context of being in a relationship with a man and married to a man, is your sexual desire for him. All right? Because at the end of the day, sexual needs, the man's sexual needs are very important to him and what he's going to need in a marriage, right? And shoot, in today's world, in a relationship, but we're not getting to that. We're just saying, well, let's focus on the marriage part, since that's a lot of people's long-term goal, main goal. That's what's going to be his need. And when you are not genuinely attracted to him, you're not going to want to show up for him as much intimately in the bedroom, all right? And if you were to survey long-term relationships, marriages, so on and so forth, and ask the men what are one of the things that, they're unhappy about, one of the main things you're going to hear is lack of intimacy. Plain and simple. Now, there are tons of reasons why that can be the case. And I understand those who will make the argument saying, well, life comes at you, you got kids, responsibilities. I get that. But at the foundation of it, to walk into a relationship or a marriage with a man you're not really attracted to, thinking you're going to somehow be able to make this work over the long run, is very unrealistic for most people. And I feel the need to mention this, kind of hit my spirit. I think it's even more difficult in today's world. I think back in the day, this might sound really bad, but I'm going to tell you my genuine thought right now. Back in the days, it may have been easier for a woman to deal with a man she wasn't attracted to, because she did it in the days of old. There wasn't the internet. There wasn't all this stuff going around where you can see all these different people and all these different things. Therefore, there was less to compare your partner to, okay, on both sides. And so that may have made it easier to sweep it under the rug, especially if your friends or family in the neighborhood all with unattractive men too. So it's like, oh, we all in the same boat, no big deal. But in today's world, where you can constantly see what you are attracted to at the click of a button, at just any moment you want, that and it creates that comparison for a lot of people. That makes it even more difficult for many. Maybe not for all of you, but for many. And so there's so much we can unpack with this, but ultimately, and I know some of you might say, because there's nothing that just kind of hit me, looks fade, right? The looks fade. It's not going to be there forever. You have to love the person. Absolutely. But just because looks fade doesn't mean you ignore attraction. And I would argue that even for those couples who they grow old together and yeah, they don't look the way they used to look, it doesn't mean they lost their attraction to each other. There was still things there that allow them to be attracted to each other, okay? That is the key. Can you at least say that? It's okay if you can say, this man ain't that cute. Cool. Everybody don't have to be with a good looking, cute man, whatever. But can you at least honestly say you are attracted to him? And if you're not, and thinking, well, you can grow into it, nah. Again, there's so much more I want to say, but we got other points we got to make. All right, so I had a lot to say on the last one, but let's keep this thing going. Another reason why growing to love a man is typically not going to work is because he may not be wired to become what you want. So what I'm saying here is that many women, in the idea of growing to love this man, they are basing that off of his potential, all right? And what they feel they see in him and what they believe he can become, and maybe they feel with the right push, with the right motivation, you know, that they'll be able to pull this out of this man or support him on that journey, and then everything will be good, all right? The problem is, I say it all the time, sometimes potential is a figment of your imagination, all right? And what you see in him, he does not see in himself. And not in the sense of he just needs to fix his vision and then he'll get it. And there might be some situations where, yeah, a man just needs somebody to believe in him and that can ignite that fire in some situations. Those are rarer situations. But what I'm saying when I say he doesn't see it in himself is he doesn't see it because that's just not who he is. All right? And you are hoping or banking on something that may never come to pass. And what will happen is, in the process, what you typically find is you'll have a situation where this woman is essentially trying to, in many ways, drag him to this next level of life, right? And he's kind of going kicking and screaming. Maybe not, literally, but that's what it feels like. There's resistance on his side. And because there's resistance, right, whether it be flat out direct resistance or just him lacking certain motivation or drive or whatever the case may be, you as a woman who's in that situation, you end up overburdening yourself. You end up having to do a lot for him, which can create resentment, which can create frustration, which can create burnout, okay? And so, and it also can create an unhealthy attachment because you have a lot of women who invested so much in this potential, in this what they thought could happen, that now it's hard to walk away without seeing a return on that investment. All right. And so now you're holding on to validate the effort, the time, the energy that you gave, and ignoring the fact that this is just not the guy. He's just not built for that. And I really believe, again, some people may see it differently, but I'm a firm believer that, some people will say you have to decide who you want to be in life. And I believe, no, you have to figure out who you are and then determine how you're going to optimize that, maximize that, walk in your purpose that God gave you. But you can't just be whoever you want to be. I know we say that you can be whatever you want to be. Nah, not really. not really, okay? And it's not to kill dreams. It's not to say don't aspire for big things. But I think those big things have to be within who you are created to be. Because even if in scenarios, so let's bring it back to this guy. Let's just say as a woman, because there's been these situations where the woman successfully was able to get this man to that next level. But a couple things could happen. One, he's there, but he's not happy there. All right. So it's almost like, let's say you push a man to become the CEO of a company, but he hates being the CEO. He was so much happier when he was in that position that, yeah, it may have made him less money, may have been less prestigious, but he had much more peace and happiness there. You may love him being the CEO. He hates it. All right. So that ends up having its own repercussions, its own issues that stem from there. Or you have the other scenario where you successfully transform this man or upgrade this man, and then he leaves you for someone else. Because from the beginning, this was not a relationship made off of or created based off alignment. It was based off of trying to get to a certain place with him. And when you get there, you don't really know what's going to happen next. Okay. Now, again, it isn't to say it's never, ever potentially worked for someone, but you got to be very careful with that. And I would argue for every one situation of success, I can show you 1,000 more where it failed miserably. All right, maybe not 1,000, but you get what I'm saying. The gap in success versus failure is huge. So ultimately, you've got to be able to understand, and I'm going to talk more about this at the end of the video about what you should do instead of trying to grow to love him, even if you see potential, even if you think maybe the attraction can change and things of that nature. And I do want to mention something else about the attraction in a second, but just understand you've got to better evaluate who this man is, rather than who you're trying to make him be. And you have to ask yourself, can you be happy with who he is? All right. Now, real quick, because it popped in my head about the attraction, I just want to say this. If the attraction is something like he lacks fashion, his fashion style is a little off, good looking dude, but he doesn't know how to dress, right? That's something where, okay, it's easier to work with, but even then, it's only easier to work with if he's a willing participant, okay? But outside of that, different story. But anyways, let's keep going to the next one. All right, so now, here's another reason why growing to love him typically does not work, is because your presence may actually stunt his growth. Now, this is again based off the idea if you're growing to love him is based off of potential, him still needing to get to a certain place, things of that nature, okay? And a lot of people just automatically think, oh, well, with the right woman by his side, he will be able to get to that next level, right? It can all work. What people do not consider is that, one, right woman, there's a difference between you being a good woman and you being the right woman for this man and him being the right man for you, okay? You may be an awesome woman. You may be a woman who is fully capable of taking whatever a man has been working on and multiplying it and making it extra amazing. That doesn't mean you can do it with this guy, okay? That doesn't mean you are the right fit for him and vice versa. So you got to understand that when you're viewing yourself as just the right woman, as in like some good woman, it's two different things. But what doesn't get considered by a lot of people is that for a lot of men, and I would argue maybe even the majority of men, they are driven by what they have to do to receive what they desire to receive, okay? So basically they're going to do what they got to do to get what they're trying to get if they believe it can be achieved. Because if they don't believe that it can work anyway, then they might just give up hope. So what I'm saying is, some men, it's almost like there's a joke, I think it was Dave Chappelle who made it a long time ago on a comedy special. And it was basically like, men get nice things because women like nice things. If men could have lay down with you in a cardboard box, as in get it on with you, a lot of them would. Like they only get the house because they know you want to see a nice house and that makes you more comfortable. And so when you get with a man who is not self-motivated, doesn't have his own passions and dreams, and he isn't actually doing what he needs to do for himself, and even in some cases where he's doing some things, you being there could make him very comfortable because now he has you. If in his mind, all right, I make decent enough money, and some dudes, they could be broken, they'll still be like, oh, I'm good now. But let's just say he's making decent enough money, may not be what you think he should be making, what you hope that he will make. But to him, it's, I'm good, got the money, I got my girl, I'm cool. I don't need more than this. I got food on my table, I'm fine. He now has lost his motivation to push further. And some of that is because he has not reached a certain level or maturity or development in his life that now allows him to understand what he needs to do, regardless of whether there's a woman in his life or not. As a man is growing up, many, again, in the early stages are very driven and motivated by women. And it takes some men a while before they realize, listen, regardless of women, you got to figure yourself out. You got to do things for you. You got to make something of yourself, okay? If he hasn't hit that level on his own and you jump in before then, thinking that I can now help him and do better, it's going to... I wish we could do, if I did a call-in show one day, I could almost guarantee if I made this the topic, there'd be thousands, millions of women who could call in and testify and say, yes, this happened to me. I got with him when he was at this stage of life. I thought he could be better, and he got comfortable. He got lazier. He stopped trying, all right? Despite all her efforts to push him further along. You got to understand, again, it's about evaluating this man's character, who he really is, and not what you have in your imagination, okay? What you're fantasizing it could all be. And understand that, yes, it may require you, if you see potential, you see this guy who can become more, right? Rather than getting with him in a relationship, you're essentially rewarding him. It's like the analogy I love to use. It's if a job said you have to have a master's to work here, but we're gonna hire you anyway while you can have time to go get your master's on the side. If getting that master's is hard work, or you're not truly as motivated by it, or you only wanted the master's to even get the job, and now you got the job, there's a very good chance you won't go get the master's. Until you actually feel the heat of, oh, this job is going to fire me, okay? So it's like if you're already being incentivized, you're less likely to do the work. So, but if that job said, hey, we like you, you're an amazing candidate, if you do get your master's, we are willing to hire you. If you want that job, you're going to go get that master's. Well, guess what? It's the same thing with a man. If you think he has this greatness in, okay, cool. Let him know, I like you. I think you're amazing, but I need you to reach a certain place of stability in your life before we can join together. And if you do that, we can make it happen, right? As long as you're still available, hopefully. But you know what I'm saying? Like, but until then, ain't no in between. Because if you start doing the in between, you can throw things off. So be mindful. All right, so now, before I continue with another reason, just want to mention to you real quick, I'm always doing different events throughout the years, different tours. There's so many I can name right now, but because I don't know when you might see this video, I just want you to go to my store, stephonspeakshop.com, and click on live events and see if I'm coming to a city near you. I would love to meet you guys at my events, and I want you to experience these things and just the overall energy and the information and just all that comes with it. So again, go to stephonspeakshop.com and click on live events and see if I'm coming to a city near you. Now, to keep this thing going, another big reason why growing to love a man typically does not work is because you end up overlooking red flags, thinking or hoping it will change. All right? So again, what we have to understand is at the foundation of the behind the premise of growing to love him is essentially saying, I recognize something is not there, but because there's enough good that I see, I'm gonna just try to work with this, and in time, feelings will grow stronger and change and all these things, okay? And for many people, those things that are not there are actual red flags. But sometimes, because the red flags are so common to what a woman has experienced or other women experience, they sweep it under the rug. So for example, let's say he's not great with communication. His communication is horrible. Because a lot of women have experienced that, it becomes very easy for some to just rationalize as, well, this is how every man is, so I'm not going to stress that. I'm going to just keep it moving and deal with it. But then, like I always say, the same red flags you ignore in the beginning are the same red flags that end your relationship. That same poor communication that you saw initially is the same thing that ends up ruining and ending your relationship. Now, maybe it's not bad communication. Maybe he's a great communicator, right? But there's some other issue. And either way, growing to love him is saying to myself, oh, you know what? Maybe that's not that big of a deal. Maybe that's not that serious. And you'll have people in your head, maybe other married people, other people in relationships, friends, family. And I have to say that you got to be careful, because though their intentions are good, sometimes those friends and family are encouraging you to sweep things under the rug because they just want to see you in a relationship. They want to see you get married. They want to see you have babies. And they feel like, okay, she has a good chance here, and she hasn't had much success recently. So you know what? I don't want to nitpick. Let's just ignore that issue, right? It's not that much of a problem. And let's encourage her to push forward. And then again, it's that same problem that ends up creating a bigger issue. Okay? Or you'll have some situations where if someone is dealing with that exact same issue. So for example, let's use the poor communication. Let's say you have a couple, friends of yours, and her relationship involves horrible communication. So, but she stays. For various reasons, she has chosen to stay. So now when you tell her about your concern, you think she's gonna be like, nah, you should leave? She's not gonna tell you to leave when she's not leaving. She'll probably rationalize to you, oh, you know, that's how these men are. You know, it reminds me, like, so many stories I would hear where a woman would get cheated on, and their mother or their aunt would say to them, well, you know, this is what men do, and boom, 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 boom. And it just shows how, like, if that's what that person has gone through and has accepted, whether someone agrees with that mindset or not, I'm just pointing out the psychology of, if I have dealt with it and I have chosen to move past and accept it, then my ability to tell you otherwise is severely hindered. I am more than likely going to encourage you to deal with it as well. Again, right or wrong, fair or not, that's just the psychology behind that. But again, whatever the red flag is, you can't ignore it. And there's a lot of times where a woman, you like this man a lot, and you don't address the red flag because deep inside you know that addressing it will give you clear answer that you have to let him go, that this isn't going to work. And because you want to hold on to the belief that this can work, you want to hold on to how good this feels right now, even if some of that good feeling is all in your head, you choose to ignore, you choose to sweep it under the rug. Now, I don't say this to you to beat you up, make you feel bad, or anything like that. We all make mistakes. I tell you this to be aware so that the mistake is not continuously being made. Or for those of you who have already are in the situation right now, to awake, because I'm gonna be real with y'all. I spoke to someone earlier today who's on the verge of divorce. And when we went down the whole timeline and discussed everything, it was clear from day one where all the issues were. So I see so often how the ignoring of this, what it ends up being anyway. It's almost like we're just delaying the inevitable, but in delaying the inevitable, we're creating or allowing a situation that can invite more problems, more issues, more difficulty, right? And I want to at least help minimize that as much as possible. So yes, ignoring red flags is very common when trying to grow the love of man, and that's why I don't think you should do it. All right, so this is one of those videos where I had a few more, but it looks like we're gonna need a part 2 for this as well, okay? But let's get to another point that I need to make. Another reason why growing to love a man does not work is because, are you actually growing to love him, or are you learning how to tolerate him? All right. Now, I know some of y'all was like, ooh, because I know it hit some of y'all when I said that. And you know how real that is. The reality for many people is that it's not love that's occurring here. It's learning how to become conditioned to their presence. It's learning how to tolerate them. It's learning how to just accept. It's becoming comfortable with settling in many cases, okay? But it's not actual love there. And let's go even further. For some, it's not even born out of love. It's born out of fear. It's born out of, well, you know what? I don't have any better options right now. It's born out of, I'm not getting any younger right now. It's born out of, you know what? I'm tired of my friends and family asking me when I'm going to get a relationship or when I'm going to have kids. It's born out of all these different things, but not love. And so when it's born out of these different things, you certainly aren't going to grow to love him because that was never really there. And so you end up learning how to tolerate this man, but everyone has their limits. It seems very doable initially, okay? And for many people, they were able to get past year 1, year 2, maybe year 3, year 5, whatever. But there comes a point where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. This isn't working. And the reality was it was never working. You just kept looking the other way, pushing past it, kept going. You didn't like it, but you just, you try to find the good things to focus on. For some people, those good things became their kids. Once they had the kids, they were able to focus so much energy on the kids and the blessing of I have my kids and I love my kids that it helped them tolerate or help them deal with the reality of I don't really like my partner. I'm not in love with my partner. All right. But I like what we have here, this family and this home and where we live and maybe even the perception of others that we're this great family. That some people feed off of that too. But how long can you live in that alternate reality, so to speak? Right? Maybe not an alternate reality, but you know what I'm saying? How long can you distract yourself from what's really going on? And for many people, at some point, it catches up to them. And this is why, one of the reasons why you'll have these situations, and you hear it on the internet where people talk about a lot how 70% of divorces are initiated by women. And some people will make this argument, oh, you see, these women can just get up one day and I'm bored, so I want to leave you. Or get up one day and no longer want to, be committed in a relationship. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to sit here and say that's never happened like that. I'm skeptical, but I'm not going to say it never happened like that. But that's not what's going on in most of these situations. That woman's been considering it for the longest. It's been lingering in her for Lord knows how long. She's been battling with herself, going back and forth, probably talked to some people. And they might was like, nah, you just keep it going. You're going to be all right. Just keep pushing through. And she, all right, suck it up and just kept it. But at some point, you can't suppress it forever. And that tolerating runs out. And if it doesn't run out with officially saying, I'm done and I can't do this, it runs out because now your attitude is different. The way you talk to him is different. Your ability to be intimate with him is gone. And so so now those things start creating their own issues, but it all stemmed from there was a disconnect from the beginning. There were things not there from day one. And you were never really into this man. So again, I understand how tempting that can be depending on your situation and the things that people put in your head. And I understand that you see these other examples of people claiming, well, that's what they did and it worked for them. But again, you got to look deeper. When they say it worked for them, what does that look like? Did it really create a happy relationship with them? And again, there's exceptions to every rule, but for the majority, it's not the case. So what I want you to understand is this. If you see potential, if you see that if you really believe you can grow to love a man, then grow to love him while you're his friend. All right? The problem is getting romantically involved with this individual before they have reached a point. And again, it doesn't mean we can't push, strive for more, and we're going to always be growing and things of that nature. But is he at a level right now? You have to ask yourself, if this man does not truly change as of today, can I still be happy with who he is? If the answer is yes, all right, cool. If the answer is like, nah, something's gonna have to change. All right, well then let's wait for those changes to occur. And we wait while in friendship, not getting romantically involved, because that's where it gets messy. That's where now it becomes a struggle to not go deeper and deeper and deeper. And now it's all the things I mentioned earlier. Maybe he's not reaching that potential because he never had it in him. Maybe he loses motivation because now he has you in his life. You know what I'm saying? Maybe there's other red flags because you were focused on this one. There was some other red flags you ignored that were even bigger issues. There's so many different possibilities. But the bottom line is, you want to wait till he gets to a certain level. I'm not talking about he has to be, nobody's perfect. We're not talking about perfection. We're not talking about some man becoming rich. We're talking about him getting to a level good enough to where you two can truly be happy with each other, are in alignment with each other, and then can truly grow together with each other. So, you know, one of the complaints I hear from some men, not all, but from some men, is this idea that women don't want to build with somebody. They want this ready-made man. You know, they're not down to be in the trenches with this man. They just want the benefits after he's established himself. And quite honestly, I think it's a bunch of BS. I mean, listen, don't get me wrong. I think there are certain scenarios and circumstances where it's perfectly okay for a woman to build with a man from the ground up. I'll throw one of those circumstances out right now: when you're really young, okay? High school love, maybe early college. All right, then it's much more understandable. But I don't think this is a really good approach for grown adults, okay? But I'm gonna talk about this from both angles, young and grown, and this idea of accepting struggle love and trying to date a man for his potential, all right? A lot of women have gotten themselves in trouble with this. Now, I am in no way dismissing the fact that have some people been successful with this? Of course. But if I told you that 1 out of 1 million people who put all their savings into lottery tickets won the lottery, would you go put your savings in the dang lottery, right? No, just because someone has had success with it doesn't make it a good approach. The reality is that for every successful story of dating a man's potential or struggle love, I could give you 1,000 more of disaster, of dismay, of emotional damage that has now had ongoing repercussions for that woman. All right. So let's break it down, because I know just saying that isn't enough. Let me fully explain why I am not in agreement with this whole dating for his potential. And right off the bat, the first point I want to make is that sometimes potential is a figment of your imagination. So listen, I think there's an argument to be made that everyone has potential. Like, everyone has this potential of reaching a higher level in life, so to speak, right? And evolving as an individual. But the reality is that in life, many people never meet that potential. Many people don't strive for more than what they are at the moment. They don't tap into that greater self. And there's various reasons for that. And sometimes they don't even see that within themselves, but we'll get more into that later. But the point is, you meet this man, he seems like a good dude, he's down on his luck or he's struggling at the moment, and you believe in his ability to become something more. But you have to ask yourself, am I tapping into his vision, or am I projecting mine onto him? All right? Because this is where a lot of conflict is created, because you have women taking that figment of their imagination, making it a reality to them, and now expecting for this man to reach there, and also believing, well, because I am this amazing woman, I can take whatever he has and I can multiply it and I can get him there. Now listen, I'm in no way saying, let me say it differently. I believe that the right woman for a man can magnify what he has. I believe in that. But notice I said magnify what he has. You cannot magnify what he does not possess. You cannot magnify what he is not willing to embrace and grasp. And so you have to start with, what is his vision? What is his perception of success in life? Where would he find his happiness? So let's put it in a more specific context. Let's say, for example, you ask a man, like, what's your vision of success? What's your vision for yourself? And for him, it's like, hey, I would love to be a plumber, right? I think I'm good with plumbing and working with my hands. And if I was making $75,000 a year, I'm good. That's my happiness. That's my vision of success. Now, listen, you might say, but no, I think you can be better than that. I think you could own a plumbing company, and I think you could be making hundreds of thousands per year. You're tapping into that perception of potential. But again, it's the potential you're projecting onto him, not the potential he's embraced for himself. He's telling you, I will be happy at 75K. He is telling you, I will be happy working for someone. If you now put higher expectations on him, or force that on him, because I'm gonna be real, some of these situations, the woman is forcing it on him. You are likely to find yourself in a situation where, once he reaches his own perceived desire of success, his motivation, his work ethic will take a hit. Because he doesn't really want it for him, he may only be trying to do it for you. And when we don't want something for ourselves truly, we are not going to be as passionate, as consistent, as focused on getting it done. Okay? And more specifically, when achieving it is hard. If it's easy, then that's a different story. You know what I'm saying? I can do things for you that make you happy when it's not really an inconvenience to me. But when we're talking about things like this, well, it requires a lot more work. It requires a lot more sacrifice. And that's where things are going to start to waver. Not to mention that if he does not achieve your projected potential of him, you will not be satisfied with his level of success. You will not be happy about where he's trying to stop and be comfortable at. So now, even though he's able to provide, in a sense, he's able to pay some bills, so he's not like a liability in your life, so to speak, in the sense that he can't take care of himself. But he's a liability in the sense of the lifestyle you were trying to live. He's a liability in the sense that he's not doing what he needs to do that you feel will allow you to be able to experience the things that you want in your life and in your relationship. And so now you will have resentment. You will have negative energy. You will have tension, and things will only go downhill from there. And understand that it starts with that, let's say, that resentment from him not achieving your perception. I'm going to keep repeating that, your perception of his potential. And then it spills over into other areas of the relationship. So essentially, just to give one example, you're losing respect because you think he should be better than what he's achieving, what he's pushing for, and he doesn't want to do it. And so now you're frustrated. And what happens is now you become less sexually receptive to him. You become less turned on by him. Because listen, if you don't respect the man, you're not going to be turned on by him. Plain and simple. And so now you're going to have more headaches when it comes time to getting it on. You're going to be more tired. You're going to find some more excuses. Or even if you do it, you won't be that into it. So now what started with resentment in one area turns to issues in another area. And so now there'll be a frustration because his desire for you to engage with him sexually more often will be viewed as an annoyance. And he will now build resentment towards you because you don't want to engage as much, or you're not engaging as much as you used to. And the reason, and he doesn't understand that it's gone down because your respect for him has gone down. So we're not going to dwell too much on this one, but the point is, you really got to remember that, are you tapping into his belief of his potential, or are you projecting it onto him? All right, so another reason why you should avoid struggle love, because essentially struggle love and dating for his potential go hand in hand, or date a man for his potential, is because ultimately you should not have to be his motivation. And let me rephrase that. You shouldn't have to be the person that pushes him, okay? So what I mean by that is this. There's nothing wrong with a man using his love for you and his desire to make you happy and pour into you as part of his motivation to achieve more. You know, there's nothing wrong with him saying, yo, I do this because I want to provide this for my woman, right? But when you have to be his motivation in the sense that you have to push and pull and drag him to that point, this is a problem. All right. So again, it starts with, does his vision and your vision line up together? Because if they don't, this is where all things start to fall apart. And so now, using that example of you want him to own the plumbing company, he just wants to be the plumber. Well, you will find yourself in a situation where you constantly have to be on him. You constantly have to push him. There's some situations where the woman, in even less simpler dynamics, has to go as far as finding the job for the man. So I can't tell you how many situations I've seen where woman's dating a man, he's out of work, and he doesn't even get himself up to go apply. No, she puts together the resume, she goes online, she submits the resume, she is finding the man work. And then you'll have situations where she's finding him jobs and the man's like, nah, I don't like that one. Nah, I don't like that. Like, he's shooting down the opportunities she's even trying to present. It's like, damn, you're not even doing the work to find it. Then you want to be picky. Beggars shouldn't be choosers in this type of situation, but yeah, you're being super picky. And then when you do go on an interview, because you're not really serious about getting the job, the man here, you bomb the interview. You don't take it serious because you're not truly invested in it. So here's the thing. The man has to be motivated enough within himself to want to invest in the process of it. Because when we don't have to invest, we have less respect. We give it less value, all right? And we're a lot more likely to just not care when things don't work out because we didn't lose anything. And for that man, if he is not generally pushing himself to do the work to make things happen, there's a problem. Now listen, there's nothing wrong with you being a moment of motivation, right? But I want your motivation to more so be encouragement, not just flat out doing for him. Now, it's one thing, let's use the resume scenario. It's one thing if the man is getting up and submitting, let's say 50, and I'm just throwing out a number, I'm not saying you have to submit this many, but let's say he's submitting 50 resumes a week, right? Or a day. And you as a woman say, you know what, I want to help my man, so I'm going to submit 50 more. That's fine. Because see, you're not doing the work for him, you're enhancing the work he's doing. That's what's good. So you want to ask yourself, am I enhancing, am I adding, am I multiplying the efforts that he's making, or am I simply doing the work? You know, there's an analogy I like to use when people talk about this whole building together. I always say, like, some of these men, their version of building together is if you have this construction site and the woman and man are going to build a house, the man comes there And the woman brings the tools, the bricks, everything. And that man got him a lawn chair and a glass of lemonade. Sitting back, watching you lay the bricks, watching you dig the holes and lay the cement or whatever the case may be. And then got the nerve to tell you missed the spot. Or got the nerve to tell you got to do this better. That's what some of y'all are dealing with or had dealt with, or God forbid, will find yourself in. But I'm hoping you watch this video, you won't go down that path anymore. And if you are in that situation, time to make a change. But the point is, you should not be the driving force. All right? You should only be complementing his already self-motivation and the efforts he's willing to make. All right, moving along. Another reason why I'm not a believer in dating his potential and why you need to avoid struggle love is because ultimately you cannot control what this man does. So again, one of the issues with the struggle love, the dating his potential, is that in many cases, you are dealing with a man that has not developed his own work ethic, okay? And that's why you have to be very careful and mindful of, am I working with a man who has the character already in place, who has the foundational pieces already in place, and I'm enhancing that? Or am I trying to even put that into him, all right? Or again, just do it for him. And so a lot of men don't have that work ethic. And so essentially, you're either gonna find yourself doing the work or begging, pleading, hoping he will finally step up and do something. But you can't control that. And that's why it's so important that he shows you that ability first, beforehand, for you to consider going on this path with him. He has to show you that he can be consistent in his efforts. He has to show you that he doesn't mind making sacrifices. And I stress the word sacrifices because I think that one of the biggest reasons why people don't find success, of course, there's a plethora of issues, and for some people, certain things are outside their control. But for a lot of people, and if I'm honest, I'd have to even say most people, what they lack is a willingness to make certain sacrifices, okay? So, for example, you'll have some guys who they want to spend their money on video games, new shoes, whatever, rather than cut those desires off and use that money to invest in their business, or use that money to invest in themselves. Use that time that they give to having quote unquote fun and actually putting in the work. I'm going to use this personal example, even though I kind of don't want to, but I don't know why I feel like I need to. Like, I remember when I was going through the process of building myself up as this relationship coach, as an author, I went through, I want to say, a couple years of not going out at all, not taking any trips, not going out, not buying new clothes, all with the mindset of, I need to push all of that into what I'm trying to build. I need to push that into the purpose God has given me and work on that. And yeah, I wasn't having fun. Yeah, it wasn't the most pleasant experience. It was a grind, but that's what it takes in most cases to reach success. You would have a very difficult time talking to any successful person that doesn't have a story of making sacrifice. Okay? So that could be a personal lesson, but that's also a lesson for what you need to evaluate when you are dealing with these men who want you to accept their potential and build with them. And I think a great question to ask them is, what are you willing to sacrifice? What lengths are you willing to go to build? Not to mention, this is also coming to me now, is what do you view as my role in this process for you right now? What are you looking for me to do? Because some men will tell on themselves. Some men are going to tell you from the jump how much they expect you to do so much of the work, if not all of it. You know what I'm saying? Again, I always say, you let someone talk long enough, they will expose themselves in most cases. So you want to ask questions rather than just jump on the idea of, no, I believe in him. I see all this greatness in him. I'm going to ride with him. He might ride you right into a ditch. So you got to be careful with that. But ultimately, you can't control what he does. So you've got to be careful of putting yourself in a scenario where that's going to become a huge problem for you. All right, so now the next one, and I think this is a huge one that a lot of women do not consider. And that is, can you respect him if you have to lead him to success? So let me give you a scenario. You'll have a situation where woman meets a man, he's down on his luck or he's struggling or whatever. He just hasn't built himself up yet. She goes for that struggle love. She goes for that dating for his potential. And let's say in this situation, they are actually able to produce success. Now, I want to be very specific. Though the success was produced, it was through a lot of her leadership, a lot of her pushing buttons, making things happen, doing the work. So it wasn't really this man putting it on his back and her just kind of encouraging and supporting. No, it was her really doing it and him going along for the ride. And now when he finally gets there, I have to mention this. The crazy thing in a lot of these situations, that man becomes successful and ends up leaving that woman. Not all, but we've heard it, we've seen it, okay? Because again, a lot of times he just went along for the ride because he knew you could get him there, but he wasn't with you for you, okay? He was with you because you provided the resources and the means to get to where he desired or would hope to be. But then on the flip side of that, even when the man does not leave her, the issue that arises is that the woman doesn't actually respect the man. Because she will always feel like, I made you. I did this. I am the creator of your success. See, it's different when you can view it as, I poured into a man who put in the work himself. Because in that scenario, you can still respect him, you can still honor him, you can still revere him. You got to see his growth. You got to see how he pushed himself to this better place. So in that scenario, you can actually gain even more respect for someone because you got to see the whole process. See, that's different from just seeing someone successful. You don't know the grind they went through. But when you see what the grind that man went through, that can even add more to it, more love, more respect. But when you know there wasn't no grind for him, the grind was you. That changes everything. And so now you find yourself still unhappy with this man. You find yourself still being able to honor and respect him in the way that he will need. Because see, when he wasn't that guy yet, when he wasn't in that successful position, and you probably had disrespectful moments, let me tell you, they come out. The women in these situations, whether they realize it or not, them disrespectful moments come out. Because again, let's call it for what it is. To that woman, that's her son. And she gonna speak down to him like that's her son, right? But because he's in the position that he needs you, and he knows you doing the work, he has to take it. He accepts it. And honestly, he know he can't get this anywhere else. So he's going to roll along with all your disrespect. He's going to go along with your moments of lack of love, whatever, because you're frustrated, because you're drained. And I'm not even saying it to just like cast this bad light on the woman. It's just saying what actually happens in these scenarios. But now that he's successful, he ain't trying to put up with it no more. Now that he's successful, he got options. So one of the reasons why that man moves on to another woman isn't simply because he was plotting and planning the whole time to leave you. It's because the relationship has no quality, has no love. It was so based off of getting this man to this place. And what happens for a lot of women is they become attached to the investment they have made in this man. So now, even though it's an unhealthy, unhappy relationship, she doesn't want to walk away because she still wants a return on that investment. But for that man, he's not happy, but again, he has to go along. So again, this is one of those moments where I feel like I may need a whole different video just to go even deeper into this. But the point is, you really have to ask yourself, if I have to do too much, there's a line that gets crossed in what you have to do, the work that you put in, that can cause you to no longer respect the man the same. And you gotta be honest with yourself about what that line is, and express that, because this thing will not work out in the long run if it's crossed. All right, before I continue, I just want to let you know, go to my site, StefanSpeaksShop.com. I'm gonna put the link in the description in the comment section. There you can get tickets to the tour, my Heal My People tour that we're gonna be doing. All right, and I'm touring every year. So when you go to my shop, you'll see any events I'm doing, be able to get tickets, my books, courses, coaching opportunities, you name it, it's all there, plus free offers. So check it out, StefanSpeaksShop.com, or click the link in the description or in the comment section. All right, so we got some more to go over. And this one might punch some of y'all in the gut, but you know, I love y'all. and it is not to make you feel bad or hurt your feelings. It is to awaken you to a certain reality, to give you the truth that can help set you free, okay? And the other reason why I am so not in favor of dating for his potential is because some of you may do it to hide your own insecurities. So here's what I mean. You know, there's this idea that when a woman is willing to date a man who's down or who hasn't built himself up, that means she's really is into him, or she really loves this man. And I'm here to tell you that's just simply not true. There's a lot of situations where women, out of a codependency, choose men who are going to need them. Choose men that they can fix and build up, because what they're looking for is emotional safety. What they're looking for is, if I have more value here because he needs me, then it creates this false sense of security that he will then respect, value me more. He won't cheat on me. He won't walk away from me. I'm much too valuable. He's lucky to have me. And that stems from insecurities a lot of times. It stems from a struggle with feeling that you have the value to bring to the man who is established and successful or has his stuff together, okay? Whether that be insecurities about your emotional health, meaning, listen, you know, like, to give an example, if we know we have issues, if we know we got a lot of problems we need to resolve, it becomes a lot harder to be with a healthy person, because now that shines a bigger light on our issues. And so subconsciously or even consciously, we will choose someone who has a lot of issues themselves, because now it's like, if I had, and I'm just using the example to kind of help make this more clear. If I have, let's say, 3 issues, right? Finding someone that got 5 makes me feel like, oh, okay, well, I'm not that bad. They got 5, I only got 3. You know what I'm saying? It's a way to make us feel a little bit more comfortable about the situation. And it allows us to be able to point at their flaws and not just have our flaws constantly exposed. So the same thing can happen in the value that we bring to a relationship, because for a lot of women, for example, they've put their value in their resources, in their education, in their ability to be a go-getter and things of that nature, and magnify and multiply. So if you put your value in all these things, and you meet a man who already has his stuff together, it's very easy for a woman to say, well, then how do I fit in here? What value do I bring here? And if I don't bring value here, then I become more expendable. Then I'm easily replaceable. And I'm just telling you, this is what a lot of women, where subconsciously or consciously, that's what's playing in their head. And so now it becomes uncomfortable and scary to be with the guy who has his stuff together. And it becomes easier to be with the fixer-upper. But again, that doesn't really work, because we should not be basing the foundation of our relationships off of if I can fix him or I can feel more value here. It should first be off of, is there a genuine connection here? And understand that our value, and more specifically, the woman's value, doesn't come from the resources, so to speak. If it comes from the resources, then don't be surprised when a man uses you for those things. You know, it's the same way when men who have money and lead with their money then complain about a woman using them for money. It's like, yo, but that's what you led with. That's what you put your value in, is you being rich and being wealthy rather than who you are as a man. And so for a woman, if your value is in education, my own house, and this and that, well, then don't be surprised when that's what you get used for. Because that's where you're putting your value. But your true value is in who you are as a woman, your character, your spirit, your energy, the purpose God put in you. That's where your value is. And that guy who has his stuff together, if he chooses you, it's because he sees that value. And when you learn to connect with that, you will have more peace. You will feel more comfortable being with that kind of man, and you will be less likely to accept, I was going to say lower level guys, but that sounds kind of bad. But it's an accurate statement. Guys who you don't belong with. I'll put it like that. Guys who are not best for you. Guys who are projects rather than partners. And I need you to find your partner, not your project. Okay? So make sure you are choosing your man out of a healed place. Make sure you are choosing out of love and connection and not out of fear, because it is fear that has pushed a lot of women into these types of relationships. All right, we got a couple more to go. And the next one, and this is another, they're all big ones. So another reason to not date for his potential and avoid struggle love is because it can de-incentivize his willingness to become better and do more. So the reality is that a lot of men are wired to simply do whatever it takes to achieve certain desired results, okay? And you've got to understand what those desired results are to understand the mindset of that man and how much he's willing to push forward. So what I mean by the desired results is like this. If a man, going back to that original example of the guy who wants to be a plumber, he's making $70K, and let's go even lower than that. Let's go, it's not even about a specific amount of money. He just wants food on his table, a place to sleep, and a woman giving him sex and some love. Okay? If he can achieve that, making $40,000 a year, living in a small place, there are plenty of men that they're stopping right there. That is the extent of their effort, because it is getting them the desired result. Okay? If some can achieve, like let's go over it again, place to stay, food on their table, and a woman giving them some love and some sex. If they can achieve that with no job, there are men who are stopping right there. And there are plenty of situations right now, let's pray for these women, that they literally have a man with them who just lays up in their house, not working, comfortable as hell. No desire and motivation to do anymore. And the problem is, you getting with him before he has either learned how to, again, have a proper work ethic, learn how to become a man who handles his responsibilities, who takes care of things, who understands how he needs to show up in a relationship, you will basically take away the motivation to tap into those things, because he's getting what he wants already. He's getting his achieved, he's getting his desired results. And so that's where a lot of women get themselves into trouble. They make it easier. It even goes back to the whole thing of marriage. You know, I think one of the things people forget with what contributes to a decline in marriage is, one, this whole boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. Because once upon a time, for a man to get the dynamic of a woman cooking for him, taking care of his children, feeding him, sexing him, all this stuff, that used to come for the most part only in marriage. At least to get it consistently, most of the cases you had to get married to get that. Once we created a dynamic where men could get all of those things without marrying a woman, well, guess what? It de-incentivized a lot of men from bothering to get married. Now, if you have a situation where he can get that without having to bust his behind at work, it's gonna do the same thing with those guys. Not every man is naturally wired to want to do more. Not every man has that level of ambition and motivation. And you've got to recognize what kind of guy you are dealing with, all right? And you got to make sure that he understands if he wants the benefits of you, there's a level of work he has to put in. It reminds me, I've mentioned this story before. It reminds me of a scenario where I had a friend and there was this guy who was interested in her. And he was like, when he came to her, no license, low paying job, baby mama drama. I'm trying to make this story real quick. So she was like, listen, if you want to talk to me, you're going to have to get your stuff in order. You're going to have to take care of this drama, better paying job, get your license, whatever. This man came back 6 months later, license, doubled pay from where he was working, no more baby mama drama. I think even got himself his own place. He got himself together. Now, she still ain't want him, but that ain't the point of the story, all right? The point is, if she would have got with him, if she would have became his girlfriend or even casually dating him, but provided the sex, food, and all that, there's a very good chance he never achieves those things. He just wouldn't be too comfortable. But by letting him know you can get this desired result being with her if you do this work, and you will only get to be with her after the work is done, he stepped up. And that's the approach that would be better. If you see the potential in the man, right? You can be a friend of his. You can encourage him through friendship, but he doesn't get to be with you until he does what he's supposed to do. All right, and to wrap this up, last but not least, the other reason why in the vast majority of cases I would not advise you to embrace struggle love and dating potential is because at the end of the day, it just means you're settling, okay? And I want to be just real quick and clear about this whole settling thing. I don't view settling as accepting less than you desired, meaning if a woman wanted a man who makes 6 figures, but she gets with a man who makes $70,000, I don't automatically view that as settling. Because if that $70,000 man truly makes her happy and truly is able to fulfill her true needs, then she didn't settle. She found where her happiness is. Okay? To give a different example, some people may say, I want a Lamborghini, right? But then they realize a lot of headache comes with that Lamborghini. And they end up getting them, another car, a Lexus, and they are so much happier in that car. Well, they didn't settle. They just found their happiness in something different. They tapped into what they really needed. So getting with a man who's making less, doing less, whatever, is not what makes it settling. It's, can you find your happiness there? Can you truly create a healthy, successful relationship with him? Does he fulfill the needs? It's not just what you thought you wanted, it's what you needed. And that's why you want to make sure that with any man you choose, with any situation you are considering getting yourself involved in, talk to God. Because if God tells you to embrace that struggle love, then by all means, I am not going to interfere, all right? If he tells you there's the potential here and he wants you to walk out this process while being in a relationship with this man, I'm not going to interfere. But I know for a lot of y'all, if you would talk to God first, he would tell you, hold up, it's not time yet. This could be the guy. He could be the right guy, but it's not the right time yet. So make sure you are going to God before you make your decision on how you're going to proceed. Hey, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to check this one out right here, and I'll see you there. So I always say, the same red flags you ignore in the beginning are the same red flags that will end your relationship. But the reality is sometimes the red flags don't look completely red. Like